What's going on, friends? This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. How's your week going? Mine's going pretty good. Getting ready to go to Nashville, see my kid over the weekend. So pumped for that. And thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate your support. Obviously, continue to drop me comments about likes and dislikes. And if you're so inclined, hit that subscribe button. We focus on Syracuse football, basketball, and recruiting in both sports here. And we're going to do a lot of recruiting today and some really awesome viewer comments and a little bit of regular Syracuse football stuff. Okay, so the big news yesterday that I want to get into, and we've talked about this dude a bunch, is that Tadarius Hughes, a Florida State verbal commit in the 2026 class, he flipped to Syracuse. Heck yeah. That's what I'm talking about. He visited Syracuse last weekend, and he officially visited Syracuse. Let me get my notes here. I think it was in June of this past summer. I candidly didn't know how aggressively Syracuse coaches were pursuing him these days. The early signing period is in December, so next month. Like I said, he was verbally committed to Florida State. Florida State, their head coach, Mike Norvell, is kind of on shaky ground right now. So, if he gets fired or whatever, certainly could see guys decommit. But Syracuse flipped Tadarius, and he's a 4-star defensive back. A couple of the recruiting services have him as a top 25, top 30 safety in the class. He's from Florida. He plays at Miami Northwestern Senior High School alongside Calvin Russell, who we all know is a Syracuse football 2026 verbal pledge, 5-star wide receiver, who was on his official visit to Syracuse this past weekend. So they were both there. And this is a great pickup for Fran Brown and the staff. Hughes is a top 400 overall prospect, according to a couple different recruiting services. And it's just another example of Syracuse faring well on the recruiting trail, even though the team's not having a great season. And faring well in Florida, frankly, which for my money has the most talent in high school football. Some people might argue Texas or California or some other states. I'd say it's Florida. And so let me just make sure I got my notes here. Syracuse now has 30 verbal pledge, or at least when I taped this show, unless there was something that changed in between, since then, probably not. But 30 verbal commits. 8 from Florida, including Russell, Hughes, and a couple other 4-stars, Javion Cooper, Cameron Wilson, Jarius Rogers. And the class is 23rd nationally, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, after Hughes flipped. So it's a great pickup. As we've talked about on Syracuse Central, they got another guy to flip from Penn State, Alexander Haskell from the Philadelphia area. He flipped from Penn State, which had fired its head coach James Franklin last month. And Haskell's a 2026 3-star defensive lineman. So, yeah, this class looks great. And, I've been hearing that Hughes was getting pursued pretty hard by Nebraska, but I wasn't sure about Syracuse. So it's a great pickup. Great pickup. And speaking of that, so I also saw on yesterday's Tuesday, that Syracuse offered a scholarship to a guy who plays at Miami Northwestern with Tadarius Hughes and Calvin Russell. His name is Jordan Campbell. He's a 2026 4-star edge, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call it. And he visited this past weekend, according to social media posts, with Hughes and Calvin. I don't know if it was an official or unofficial. It could have just been an unofficial. They're at the game on Friday night, and he verbally pledged to the Hurricanes, Miami, in November of 2023. So, he's 6'2", 220. He's a top 200 national prospect, according to some recruiting services, within the 2026 class. Top 20-ish, 25 edge. Actually, I think 24/7 Sports had him like a top 15 edge. Top 30 prospect in Florida, which is, that's pretty good. Florida's got some super impressive prospects. And so my feeling about, again, with the early signing period coming up, I feel like Syracuse wouldn't have offered this guy a scholarship at this point, with the early signing period coming in like, a little over a month, if they didn't think they had a shot. I'm not saying they're going to flip him, but I feel like, why offer him now? Why even bother if he's not, a potential flip target? So, again, Syracuse is doing really well in the state of Florida. They're doing really well at Miami Northwestern, which won a state title last year and look to repeat again this year. I believe they're undefeated right now. And they had a couple 2025 guys that went there as well. So our freshmen right now at Syracuse. So they're recruiting Florida well. They're recruiting Miami Northwestern, that specific program well, and yeah, we'll see if they can flip Jordan Campbell. But that's kind of cool. Like I said, top 200 national prospect in 2026. They do have some edge rushers in 2026. Jarius Rogers from Fleming Island in high school in Florida, or Fleming High School. I don't know if it's Fleming Island or not. Cameron Wilson from Miami Southridge is also a 4-star edge rusher. Cooper is from Melbourne. Jevan Cooper is from Melbourne Central Catholic, but I'm pretty sure he's an offensive tackle. So, again, we'll see. I really don't think Syracuse would have offered this dude if they didn't think they had a shot. And it's kind of cool. Always like to see this stuff and love talking about recruiting. All right, so this came out on Monday, but I did basketball on Tuesday, but I just wanted to get into it a little bit. So during his weekly press conference on Monday afternoon, Fran Brown mentioned some changes to the staff, and this had been reported by, what was the outlet? Footballscoop.com. They had some of it earlier in the day, and he, obviously got into it a little more. And one of the things is Miles White, who was the wide receivers coach, passing game coordinator, is no longer with the program. Obviously wish Miles the best. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, was he not doing a good job? Obviously the passing attacks was not doing well. Not sure there's anything wrong with the wide receivers per se, but anyway, wishing Coach White all the best. That's all I'm going to say. And then, so taking over as wide receivers coach is Josh Gaddis, who joined Syracuse in the spring as a quality control coach, offensive specialist. He was at Michigan in 2021 and won the Broyles Award, as the nation's top assistant. So he knows his stuff. And then Nunzio Campanelli is moving from coaching the quarterbacks to the tight ends, and Michael Johnson is moving from coaching the tight ends to the quarterbacks. Fran Brown said at his press conference, among other things, these changes are, give the team the best opportunity to get the best. What was the quote? Staff changes were made for the program to get the best out of our players for the final 3 games. I mean, again, it is what it is. He's obviously, he's shaking things up, so to speak, a little bit. And, is it going to do anything these last 3 games? I don't know. Is it going to cause dudes to leave the program or decommit and all that? I mean, Fran even made a comment like, you're coming to play for me. You're coming to play for Syracuse. You're not coming to play for position coaches, so to speak. I mean, that's true, but obviously, guys, when they commit to a team, they certainly could be very close with a certain position coach. And if that position coach leaves the program altogether, it's a little different than the position coach, maybe changing to coaching a different position group. So, and then that made people think about Steve Angeli, who played at Bergen Catholic in New Jersey for Nunzio's brother, Vito, if I got that right. Does that change his mind or whatever about coming back? And Fran, was like, nah, Angeli's coming back. He'll be our quarterback next year unless something weird happens. So, again, stuff happens. I don't think it's necessary. I still think that I don't see Syracuse beating Miami or Notre Dame. So the best, if they beat Boston College in the regular season finale at home, they'd be 4-8. But, Fran's got to do what Fran's got to do. It's just been a tough season. And the offense has really struggled. Not just the passing game, the offensive line, the run game. Just not good. So, Fran's doing what he needs to do. It is what it is. It's always, I feel like it's always tough to make these changes and do these types of things mid-season, or this is even mid-season. This is 75% of the way done. But, I'm not privy to all the combos inside the program. So, we'll see. we'll see how it all shakes out. I'll be curious to see, after the season's over, if there's any staff changes or, guys coaching different position groups or just guys leaving the program coming in terms of coaches, assistants. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, let's get to some viewer comments because there's some good ones here. And this is from Monday, because um, Tuesday I did basketball. So anyway, Junior Cologne, Jr. Cologne 76. He had a couple comments. I was talking about um, the loss to North Carolina, and he said, Neil, I feel your pain. I think we're all just overall frustrated. It's not against anyone, but I think just frustrated. Things didn't go our way. Didn't go in our direction this year. The way Syracuse is playing now, I have a serious case of the Mondays, and I always love those office-based references. And yeah, I hear you. I hear you, my friend. You know, I'm still high on Fran Brown and the program, and I think there was just a perfect storm. Not to use a cliche or whatever. Actually, that's a great movie with a sad outcome if you've seen The Perfect Storm. But I think it was just like a bunch of factors, balled up together in terms of young roster, a lot of guys, underclassmen playing big roles, um, tough schedule. They lost a lot of dudes, veterans to the pros, or just exhausted their eligibility. Your starting quarterback, you're 3-1. Your starting quarterback gets injured. Obviously, struggles on both sides of the ball. Offensive, defensive line, just defense up and down, inconsistent, and yeah, it sucks. It does suck, but I still feel like the future is bright. So, AJ Klein 9340, he wrote, I assume he wrote, I shouldn't say that. You never assume anything. Quarterback carousel is crazy. I don't understand the fact they aren't letting Carney throw the ball. Joe Filardi should have been pulled for someone else to play. Don't know where Williams has been. I think a lot of this falls on the O-line, not opening holes for the running game, and then the defense gets tired. Yeah, that's fair. And I do think the whole quarterback situation is odd. I still think of all the guys, save for Angeli, I still think Ricky Collins is the best of the bunch, so to speak. But obviously he's turnover prone and they lost 4 games when he was a starter. Not that it was all on him, but so, you open it up, and Filardi, why is, and I don't care that Filardi is a walk-on. He's a walk-on because they didn't need to put him on scholarship because he's on scholarship for lacrosse. So it's not because he's like not good. Didn't he threw for like, what was it, 40 plus touchdowns and like 3 picks last year? Nah, that's baloney. So, but yeah, why aren't they letting Luke Carney throw? What's the deal with Jakari Williams? I don't think Bellin's really, he's obviously, it seems like he's low man on the totem pole. No disrespect, it's just the way it is. And so, I'm assuming that at least one or more of them are going to transfer out. But yeah, it's the quarterback stuff's been kind of odd this year. Mark P7262, because I think I asked about, drop me comments about who you think's going to be the starting quarterback, and Mark wrote, I'm thinking Dan Villari this week. Hey, listen, I loved when Villari was doing the Wildcat a couple years ago. Obviously, he was doing it because Garrett Trader was injured and they had no passing attack. But that dude's he was a warrior. And then Mark writes, edit also to those idiots calling for Fran Brown to be fired. Consider how many choice coaching positions are open right now. All those high-end recruits we've been getting will just follow him to his next job if we were to let him go. Yeah, and sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys that are verbally committed to Syracuse in 2026, and they have 8 pledges in 2027 they're committing to Syracuse more for Fran Brown than for Syracuse because Syracuse has been down for so long. They're coming to play for Fran Brown, and that's okay. That's okay. But yeah, calling him to be fired. I mean, I'm not saying he hasn't made some. I would question some of the decisions that have been made this year, quarterback or elsewhere. But that doesn't mean that, because I feel like part of the fan base is definitely not turned on Coach Brown, but like questioning him as a head coach because people are using like the reasoning or the logic or whatever you want to call it that. They were 10-3 last year, but they had Kyle McCord who set all these program and ACC records, and then also they had a favorable schedule. and they had some really, really, really excellent guys at, different skill positions, whether it's, OG or LaQuinn Allen, some of the guys on defense, Clarence Lewis, Elijah Clark. Um, and others. I'm obviously, not getting everyone there. Justin Barron, Marlo Wax, Baltimore, just like me, Baltimore guy. Um, so, and then this year you lose a lot of those guys. Some of those guys are shining in the pros now. You've got this young roster, a lot of, like I said, freshmen and sophomores in big roles. They didn't have as big of a transfer class. They had a bigger prep class in 2025 versus 2024. A really brutal schedule. And yeah, the defense has been inconsistent. Their starting quarterback got injured in the fourth game, and it's been all downhill ever since. And like I said, it's not just on the quarterback play, but that's certainly a big part of it. But yeah, calling for Fran to be fired. Are you kidding me? And then G-Man Cool 6, G-Man Cool 628 wrote, need to flip Hughes and Isaac. Isaac was the 2026 three-star DL from Penn State that's going to officially visit for the BC game. And I've mentioned on Syracuse Central, and then Hughes did flip. So obviously this was 2 days ago. So G-Man, we got Hughes, brother. Or sister. Should never assume, but you know what I'm saying. And then my man Peace Love 5873. All right, so I'm going to paraphrase here because this is a really long. It's been a frustrating season. If the losses weren't enough, we have a acerbic crybaby fan base, just makes it worse. The only thing more frustrating than losing is some of our fans. Neil, do you remember the McPherson era at all? You're familiar with the Northeast recruiting machine? Yeah, the one that fueled the only 20-year period of relative consistent success in the history of SU football, bridging the McPherson and Pasqualoni eras. I think some of our fans might benefit from a history lesson. You have a platform, ostensibly one that you'd like to grow. I wonder how many of our younger fans realize Fran Brown is the only coach in the last 30 freaking years that seems to understand how to make SU a powerhouse again. And then Peace Love says, have you ever thought about some historical perspective content being like an occasional niche? Blah 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 blah. Might provide insight within a certain context, like what happens to most teams when they lose 12. And this is what I was getting earlier. So Peace Love, like what happens to most teams when they lose 12 NFL caliber starting players and even more graduated on the roster, replace them with 35 freshmen and 6 transfers. What happens to that same team when you give them one of the hardest schedule in the country and they lose their only starting quarterback? Or how about this? For every Antoine Delarier on any given roster, there are 10 to 15 other freshmen who have never been in legit strength and conditioning programs before going to college. How does this affect a team starting so many freshmen, with regard to getting off block to make tackles, opening holes for runners on offense? I have common sense answers to those questions. For those with no common sense, maybe you could help paint the picture. Can you paint, Neil, in any way everyone can understand? In a way everyone can understand. How long since you used finger paints? Well, Peace Love, I mean, I haven't used finger paints in a while. I did when my son was younger, but he's getting on to be 9.5. So, but yeah, all legit stuff. All legit stuff. And I'll definitely try. Obviously, I like to focus on recruiting and then covering the teams in terms of their games and just news around the teams. But we can definitely get into context and historical stuff. And I went to Syracuse and graduated in 2000. Was there in the late 90s, but I've been a Syracuse basketball and football fan since the 80s. So, I'm old. I'm not like, I don't have like, I wasn't there, when Jim Brown was there and Ernie Davis, rest in peace. And, those teams, 59 title team, but I've been around the block a bit. So yeah, I can definitely do that. Peace, love. And again, you're 100% right. And I do remember the Northeast recruiting machine. And yeah, I mean, those teams back in the 80s and certainly into the, and then further down. And then, yeah, they were great. Hey, listen, I was there for 3 O'Donnell McNabb years. He was 1 year ahead of me, but and those teams, I don't remember. They always had like really good teams, and like I don't remember what their preseason rankings were, but they'd end up losing like 3 or 4 games, and they'd be like ranked in the top 20. But like I always was like, oh, what if they could just like have had like one less loss or two, have a 1-loss season or 2-loss season and be like a top 10 team versus like being like having all this, preseason expectations and then end up going 9-3 or 9-4 or whatever the records were. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, I think Fran gets it. and I hope he sticks around. And all the buzz about him being a candidate for some of these SEC jobs or whatever. I mean, just because the team stinks right now doesn't mean that he still couldn't be a candidate. Because I think other programs recognize what he's building here, how he recruits, how he keeps it real with his players. They respect that. And yeah, so they're 3-6 right now, likely going to be 3-9 or 4-8 this year, and they're 10-3 last. So I mean, it's not like his overall record after 2 years is going to be amazing, but it's beyond that. He's got a 5-star commit in 2026, multiple 4-stars. Their 2027 class only has one 4-star, but it's 8 pledges, which is like I think 1 or 2 in the country, and it's a top 5 class. So like, they're building. So it takes time, and this was again just like a perfect storm of stuff this year. Because I think with Angeli, I think even with Angeli, I don't think they're winning like 9 or 10 games, especially if like the offensive and defensive lines didn't hold up, and the defense has not been good overall. The run game's been problematic, although you could certainly point fingers at the O line for part of that. But it's just been a bunch of stuff. It is what it is. It is what it is. But great thoughts from Peace Love and the rest of the team here. Please keep dropping comments. I love this kind of stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, drop me comments about what you like and what you don't like. I'm going to focus on Syracuse basketball, Syracuse football, and recruiting for both sports. And we'll definitely get into more historical stuff. And, I'd also say maybe during the summer or off season for both sports, springtime, we'll do recruiting a lot and looking ahead to the seasons. But we can also get into stuff like that. We can have debates. Who are the best players in both programs ever? What were the biggest bust seasons or the seasons of what ifs? Because I could talk about that, especially in basketball, forever. That 1987 team, 1989 Elite Eight team, the 96 team was so awesome. The 2010 team, the 2012 team. I could go on and on. Anyway, I don't want to get off on tangents. I just wanted to say I really appreciate your support. I hope you're enjoying the show as much as I am. Please subscribe if you haven't and you feel so inclined. No pressure. And so today's Wednesday. Yes, today's Wednesday. Probably do a little bit of basketball later this week and some football and recruiting as Syracuse gets ready to play Delaware State in basketball on Saturday. And Syracuse football plays at number 18 Miami on Saturday as well. So thanks again for tuning in. This is Neil Adler with Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I will talk to you again on Thursday, friends. Take care.